I think a lot of it stems down to the cruise directors. If you've got a really good cruise director with you, and they really care about the passengers and the shows that you're putting on and the quality of the shows, it kind of instills in you that we always put a show on. It always goes up, regardless of what we have to do during the day or during the night to make it happen. It happens, All the shows I've worked on have all been projection, and it's been the right choice. We're doing, I've got some corporate installations that are going at the minute in Saudi Arabia that I'm working with a few companies with, and there is tons and tons of LED wall, and it's perfectly placed in all the right places. And then you turn around and there's these, almost like magic flying sheets that they've got, and we're projecting onto them. You've got to get yourself through, right? It's one of those, I will keep this emotion inside of me until I get to the end of the show. And then I'll go away and do whatever I need to do, scream into a corridor, quick toilet trip, and everybody's like, oh, he's had a bad show. As soon as you walk past.
Welcome to the Theatre Art Life podcast. Today we're talking with Steve Critchley. Working in the industry for nearly 20 years, Steve has seen many sectors in the entertainment and audio-visual space. Every sector has been used to grow and hone a wide variety of skills that have been used on world-class shows and events around the globe. Starting in the corporate world, this then pushed Steve to travel on cruise ships for a number of years after a 5-year stint in London. Growing yet more corporate businesses, Steve settled in Dubai, working for Franco Dragone at Perle. After leaving, he went on to build region's largest immersive venue and now owns his own business with a focus on lighting, video, and special effects. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honour to be here.
We have, as we just discussed offline, know a lot of the same people, but we've never actually worked directly together yet.
Not yet. Fingers crossed in the very near future that can happen, though, because it sounds fantastic.
Absolutely. Now, I read somewhere, was it on your LinkedIn profile, you're a golden visa holder.
I am, yes. That was an interesting experience getting that.
Tell us about, how does one become a golden visa holder?
Well, it's really interesting because normally you've got to do huge investments of millions of dirhams out here in Dubai, or you've got to have degrees, or get paid tons and tons of money. And when I left Infinity de Lumiere, I was doing a project and I thought, let me just see where we can go with this. And Dubai Arts and Culture can give you a cultural visa. If you get the cultural visa from them, you can then apply for this golden visa, which is a 10-year a 10-year visa, but it's a lifelong visa because it self-renews after 10 years. So I got everything together, did my CV, got my cultural CV together and applied. And then 35 days later or so, I got an email saying you've been accepted for the cultural visa, which for me was mega. I don't have a degree in this industry, so going down that route couldn't be done. Went and applied for a golden visa. That was a whole process. You've got to go for interviews and see people, and there's lots of box ticking. And then a couple of weeks later, there's your golden visa, and it was one of those moments of sitting back and just going, great. I don't need sponsorship while I'm in the UAE. Now what do I do? What direction do we take? The business was spawned off the back of that pretty much.
Amazing. That's such a unique thing to get because I think you're probably the only person I've actually met that has one. So it's quite an achievement. Yeah,
big time. And I know a few people that have tried to get them out here that have done even bigger and better things than I've been doing. And I've either been blessed or I've just been in the right place at the right time. But very, very exciting. And
so tell us about your company in the UAE. So did you always want to open up a company and this just happened to be the right time because you got the visa, or what was the impetus for that?
Let's be honest. I came to Dubai for 2 years to work for Franco Dragone, who I'd never heard of. And then I realized is that this absolute rock star inside of the circus and, immersive show space. 2-year contract was the plan. Come out, train the people, leave again. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we can do that. Me and my wife were just about to get married at the time. And I said to her, hey, do you want to go? And she went, yeah, both having bad days at work. And 3 or 4 months later, we're in Dubai. Stayed at La Perle for 4 or 5 years. Then moved, and then COVID happened, and naturally was a global problem.
Hmm.
We got the Perle back open, the first show to reopen after the pandemic, which was a mission. Very rewarding to be able to do that with a team that we had, and get entertainment going again was quite incredible for us to do. Went on and did a few other bits, and then it was one of those. Oh, I was working with dolphins, so I got an opportunity to go and work at SeaWorld and produce the
Right.
presentations at SeaWorld Abu Dhabi. And they say, don't work with animals or children. After I'd done SeaWorld, I then worked with children, and I can agree, don't work with animals or children. It was a nightmare. Hugely rewarding, to be fair. But yeah, it was one of those moments of like, what do I do with my life? We've settled in Dubai. We like the UAE. The GCC's a really great space to be, and it's definitely growing in terms of what we do as an industry. Theatre, entertainment, social events are getting bigger and bigger across the GCC and better. So it was one of those moments of going, let's do it. I don't have to worry about sponsorship or anything like that. Sat with the wife. She said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "No." And the day after set it up, it really was that kind of fluid. But we're afforded those opportunities out here that every now and again you get it, and it would have been silly of me, or very naive of me, not to at least try. I think I'd much rather try and fail and then go back into whatever it may be than not give it a go. I think I'd have regretted it. And yeah, we've been going 10, 12 months now, and it's great. We're sitting in a really good place at the end of 12 months, and a place where I'm excited for the next few years and seeing where the market takes us, really.
It's amazing that we have this. A lot of people end up becoming expats unintentionally, right? So they leave for a couple of years their country, and then suddenly 10 years later you're like, oh, we didn't get to go home.
Big time. I think the bit for me for that was joining cruise ships. The contracts that I took on a cruise ship was a six-week contract to cover somebody that was off on sick. And
right.
5 years later, I was still there, and it was surreal because I don't think at any point I really stopped. Get off one ship, and I was phoned, and it was straight onto another ship, and you're mending ships, fixing shows, rebuilding shows, remounting shows on different ships, and it became almost a part of life. And then it was 5 years. I'm like, right, okay, I need to go and do something real now with my, if I want to build my career, I've got to go and do something different. London happened, and then Dubai very quickly followed. So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I've said this before on the podcast, but I often find those people who have worked on cruise ships to be very resilient people and very resourceful people, because when you're out in the middle of nowhere, you got to make stuff work, right? So
yeah,
when
exactly.
I've worked with them in Macau or in other places, they're just there's some kind of training that happens to cruise ship people. I don't know, I can't quite put my finger onto it, but it's very good.
I think a lot of it stems down to the cruise directors. If you've got a really good cruise director with you, and they really care about the passengers and the shows that you're putting on and the quality of the shows, it kind of instills in you that we always put a show on. It always goes up, regardless of what we have to do during the day or during the night to make it happen. It happens. You don't have an endless resource of spares. So you might have a guy from telecoms will come in that deals with communications on the ship, and he's taking cell phones to bits to get capacitors out to fix a board for you in a spotlight, because that's the only way that you can get the show up and running. And the team gels together to do that. And I think drills are a big part of it as well, if I'm brutally honest. You are drilled
drills,
into...
like emergency drills.
Exactly. Health and safety, evacuations, dealing with it week in, week out. And it gives you it becomes very stable in, what's going to happen, but you do it immediately. I remember there was one situation and the fire alarm went off at 4:00 in the morning. We'd been in the crew bar till probably 2 or 3 in the morning. So we were, in a good state of merriness, shall we say. And I remember that alarm going off and just immediately snapping out of it and going, right, go do this. And you finish what happens, and it turns out it was a false alarm. But at the end of the false alarm, you just go, oh, how have I ended up here? And my body's, the mind's taken complete control of the body. It's completely almost subconscious the way that you react because it's drilled into you. And I do think that carries really well into our industry, because you do have to have that level of discipline now. You've got to be able to know you can walk on stage and when you can't walk on stage, because things could happen. Drown, getting taken out by a flyer, I'm sure is highly unpleasant. Set landing on you, it's a dangerous space if you don't know what you're doing and you're not paying attention. So I think all of that builds into it. And it was fun, hard work, but it was a ton of fun and a ton of learning. I learned, as you mentioned in the bio at the beginning, every job I've gone into, I've learned. And it was about growing skills. Most of the time I've blagged my way into a job, and I've kind of got to then learn what I've got to be able to, proof is in the pudding, right? I've got to be able to say, I've said I can do it, now I've got to show I can do it. And that becomes very quick to picking things up and learning things, because you don't want to look stupid in front of your brand new bosses. I think a lot of learning was key to the success for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, just going back to what you said about the drills and everything like that, I really love that philosophy from the cruise ships, because I'm always a big advocate of actual lots of practice when you're thinking about emergency scenarios in the theatrical world. Especially, we've both worked in the circus space. The more that you rehearse that, it does become in your body. So when the natural adrenaline kicks in because something's gone wrong, you can sit there and rely on your training rather than trying to think, because it's all well and good to have a nice SOP written on a piece of paper or in a computer, but unless you practice that SOP, it's not, it's nothing in that sense. You got to make sure it's actually going to be active and working when you need it.
Exactly. There's an emergency. 1 second, just let me run to my laptop. I've just got to download it so I can read it, so I know what I'm doing. That doesn't work in the environment when you've got there's an artist hanging 40 meters in the sky because something's happened. You've got to have it trained and built into you, so it's an immediate reaction. And it does carry really well into the circus world, I think, and big show world. Because you do that. Working at the Perle, it was very much drummed into you. We're doing drills. I'm rehearsing. And they call them rehearsals because it isn't life or death at the time. But you've got to be prepared for that, because it is a really, really dangerous space to be in.
Absolutely. So going back to the beginning for you, how did you end up in the industry in the first place?
I trained as a chef.
Did you really?
I did, yes. When I left school, it was very much, I didn't know where I wanted to be, whether it be light and sound and entertainment, which I'd got from my music teacher at school, or whether I wanted to go into a kitchen. And, I was working in a kitchen, 13, 14. Dad forced me into it, or I fell into it. And when I left school, it was one or the other. And the tech courses weren't there at 16. You had to go and do music and dance on stage, and I could think of absolutely nothing worse. So I went down the culinary route, and the day I left that, I had an interview with a guy called Darren Howard in Manchester. And I went down for this interview, and I thought I knew a lot. And I walked in and sat down, and I realized really quickly I knew nothing. I was the greenest of the green. And he asked questions, and I could see from my responses in his eyes that I wasn't getting the response that he wasn't getting the response he wanted. Things like, what's DMX? And I've gone, oh, it's a 5-pin cable. Not true. It's a fact, but it isn't true. And we finished the interview, and he said, have you got anything to ask? And I said, yeah, can I go and spend the day in the warehouse with the techs? And there were 3 or 4 40-ton trucks at the back that were tipping off a festival. And he went, yeah, sure. If the guys will allow it, of course you can. And at 7, 8 o'clock at night, he came in the warehouse, and I was still in there, and I was cleaning cables. I got the grunt work. Go over there, clean some cables. But while I'm doing it, I was asking the techs questions. Finish, and he goes, oh, come on, you can come for a beer with us. excellent, sounds good. Go into this pub and it's full of techs. It's one of those industry bars.
Yeah.
So he comes up after a few beers and he's like, "I need you to start next week." And I was like, "What?" I failed that interview big time. And he went, "I don't want." I knew full well I'd failed it. And he said, I can teach anybody anything if they want to learn. And that was that ultimate start to my career of going, all right, okay. So if you want to learn, if you want to teach, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to learn everything as quickly as possible. And at that age, soaking it up like a sponge as you do, put the hours in, did the time, took the incessant bullying that happens inside of the industry when you're green. And, at the time, it was just a laugh and a joke. And you look back and you go, you flew my car at 17 in the rafters because you thought it was funny. I had to get it down myself. And it does. It built, for me, it really built some character. Because as you'll know better than anybody, there are some big characters in our industry. And, it means you can go up against, you go toe to toe with these guys now. Or girls, as it may be. There are some really big characters across the board. And it was, that was kind of the start of the end almost. That was it. I was hooked. Just learning. I wanted to be a lighting designer. That was my ultimate goal. And he said to me, "Don't do that. Learn everything. While you're this young, go and learn every discipline." And it was the best piece of advice he ever gave me. Because understanding all the disciplines makes you better at your job. You can anticipate when sound is late or there's an issue with a piece of scenery because scenic are struggling or automation are having a problem. You can understand it a little bit more because you have the tiniest bit of knowledge inside of that discipline. You don't need it all. Just a little bit really helps. And, video kind of came about because lights were great. Projection was becoming a really big thing. And I remember sitting back. There's a guy called Neil Trennell that now owns a massive group in the UK. And he was a lighting designer and I was doing video. By coincidence, just happened to be vision mixing. And he said, "Oh, I wish I'd have learned this when I was younger." We got chatting. And his business is very similar to what I'm setting up now. He deals a lot with the mixed reality of lights and video because you could have one or the other, but they can also fight each other really hard. And I think to produce a perfect show, they need to be in tune. Your lighting designer and your video designer need to be on the same page. Otherwise, you're just producing a mess of light, effectively, that, across your stage, it looks terrible. So again, it was it was just those life lessons of going through. But yeah, trained as a chef, lucky, right place, right time, worked really hard. And even to this day, find myself fighting for everything that I want to do. And I think that equally makes you a stronger character. And I think a little bit more well-rounded as well. Being able to understand those disciplines and maybe even help. Sometimes you can just say those things, right? When somebody's struggling and you just drop one line, they go, it might just send them off on a tangent that they're not thought about. So yeah, it was an interesting start to the career.
I totally concur, and I had a similar start in the sense that I had left university and I didn't know if I could get stage management gigs, so I just crewed everything. Like I rigged lights, I ran microphone cables, I did all this stuff. But I look back on that, I built sets, and I look back on that now, and it was like really, like you said, a fundamental understanding of everybody's role and what they play in the thing, and the fact that I can still use a screwdriver and a cordless drill, and I can still hammer a nail in if I need to. So sometimes you always got to sweep the stage to get the show on at some point, no matter what role you're in.
Always. And anybody that will not grab that brush doesn't have a place on that stage, as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Or as the case may be in a recent show where our stage manager had to scoop up cat poop from the sand that was on the stage because it was in an outdoor area and they thought it was a big litter bin. So, whatever it takes.
Working in this industry, especially in the Middle East, you find cats everywhere, especially when you're on construction sites. And cats are great until they start doing things like that on your stage. And it's like, we've just painted it, mate.
Yeah.
Why didn't you do it 10 minutes earlier or wait at least until it was dry?
Now I've got this cat footprint everywhere. It's true. I wanted to say, though, like, it's interesting what you say about the lighting video combination. And it's something that, I'm always, when people put LED on a stage, it just takes up everything, right? And so, like, there is this big default, like, let's just throw some LED screens at it and it's going to be big, bright and beautiful. But
yeah,
it does, for me, sometimes lose the opportunity, especially if you're trying to create something quite intimate and theatrical and the balance between large and small on a stage space. What's your experience recently? Is it, because is it more LED than projection at the moment, or has it sort of rolling out?
Oh, I really think it depends on the circles you're playing in and the type of shows you're trying to produce. If you're looking at immersive, you have to use projection. LED does not work in an immersive environment because you're looking at the emitted light as opposed to it almost magically appearing there. That's definitely one of the things that I've taken away from the last 10, 15 years is know your products. Understand why you put it in there. Don't just go, everybody else is using it, that's the product to use. It should very much be a case of, I want to use this product because. If I look, going back to immersiveness, projection, I don't think LED has a place in there at all. All the shows I've worked on have all been projection, and it's been the right choice. We're doing, I've got some corporate installations that are going at the minute in Saudi Arabia that I'm working with a few companies with, and there is tons and tons of LED wall, and it's perfectly placed in all the right places. And then you turn around and there's these, almost like magic flying sheets that they've got, and we're projecting onto them because to have those as LED, firstly, you couldn't make it or warp it to that image, but you'd have cables and electric cables and power cables running to it. So for me, it's definitely about picking the right product for the right job. I think, a perfect example for me would be the Sphere in Vegas with the U2 show. So I've only seen videos. I've not been lucky enough to see it in real life yet. I didn't think it looked very good. As a spectator, it might have been wow, but am I watching U2 or am I watching the Sphere?
A big screen.
Exactly. It's just a great big telly. And I could probably do that almost as well in VR now. And the intimate moments that they had, it was so dark and there were so few lights because there was nowhere to put them because it would have been in the way of the projection. And that was one of those things that I looked at. And I think 5 or 6 years ago, or probably before meeting Franco, I'd have gone, that's properly cool. And since then, my opinion on how things look is very much altered. In that it's put yourself in the eyes of the spectator and don't just look at the wow, look at the why. Why are we doing it? What do they want to see? Yes, we've got a wow for a second, but then it is just a great big telly. I think that's the way I view it. I'm sure there's thousands of people that would disagree and say bigger is better.
No, it's interesting because like you said, once you've seen it, then content is content, and everybody's seen a lot of good content. So I think with the Sphere, it's better on the outside than it is on the inside. And in that sense, like, if you're flying into Vegas and you see this big ball that's an eyeball, like, that's cool. And it's a great iconic visual piece, but it costs so much money, Steve. Like you said, I don't know I do a lot of budgets that talk about operational costs. And when I think about what the operational cost of that Sphere might be, it kind of makes me worried. Like, they better be making a lot of money on it because it's expensive. And my colleague who lives in Vegas, he sent me a picture the other day. So there's like a whole section of the LED that was out on the outside as well. So that's also not a good look.
Oh, I mean, it's a really risky business when your entire model is based on it all working all of the time. It doesn't look good when you get that blue screen of death, does it?
And now a note from our sponsor. The Theatre Art Live podcast is proud to be sponsored by ClearCom. ClearCom is the leader in voice communications for theatre and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of ClearCom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out. Exactly. And you have a big Windows screen as a big ball.
Oh,
can you imagine?
When we did Infinity, that was we had that was 40 meters by 5 meters, so we had 7 4K outputs going to it, and you'd walk in. That was more of a problem for me than the inside. We had 130 projectors, because one projector being out, you can kind of cover for 10 seconds. A whole big blue or black screen, you've got to make sure that you've got all of the redundancies in place so that when the second it does go black, you can swap over to a redundant source so that it isn't.
100%.
And that was always my biggest worry.
Yeah, a lot of the things that when you're doing an event or something, sometimes they don't have redundancies when you're setting up for a quick event, right? So, but that's a risky thing. Especially if royalties there or it's a big gig, it's not a good thing.
Anybody that has royalty present and doesn't have tons of redundancy or the ability to fake a problem, I'm a big fan of, great, everything hasn't got redundancy, but what if? If we lose projection, what do we do? Smash all the lights on. Let's produce a look that looks great. And vice versa. What do we do if we lose the lighting console, and we haven't got a backup? There are budgets, there are always budgetary constraints where you see that every now and again. And it's a case of, well, let's build something then. Let's turn all the lights off and see what it looks like. Let's turn the projection off and see what it looks like. Let's make something look pretty. And at least give us the ability to cover ourselves for those X number of seconds or minutes while we're doing a reboot, specifically when royalty are here. I mean, it's nigh on suicidal not, to even imagine not having redundancies in place or plans in place. Because, they're just going to get up and walk out. They'll hate it. And that's not what you want. It's not good for your career either, right? You got your name attached to it somewhere. You've got to make sure that if it does go bad, you can go, oh, you spotted it, industry guy. Okay. Normal person didn't spot it. Good, that's what we want. Yeah. And that should always be the target, right? Produce something that's seamless, even if we're all losing our minds behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Nobody outside, nobody front of house spots it, or in the audience spots it. And if they do, hopefully they'll go, oh, that was well covered. We know what happened, but good job, I think that's always nice to be ready for things like that.
Yeah, I remember we used to run a video called, when I used to run the Beatles show in Vegas for Cirque du Soleil, they would have this, the backstage activity was so busy that you couldn't really just, if you had lost an act, you couldn't cut the act and sandwich the show together. It's too much going backstage, right? So we used to video all together now, which was like this animation on the screens for the 2.5 minutes or however long we needed to cover to get ourselves to the next thing. And I always used to think the worst 2.5 minutes of my life because it's just, animation on a projection screen. And some people just thought that was the show, right? And they just totally
exactly.
I was like,
exactly. But at that point, you've got to sit back at that point and go, this is well produced. We've got ourselves out of a hole. And the audience, they might not enjoy those 2.5 minutes, but the fact that they think that it's supposed to be there means it's been produced perfectly well, or you've covered it really well.
Exactly.
I think we've probably both been on a stage inside the circus world where the clowns go out on stage for 10 minutes and everybody sits there and goes, what is going on? Why are they now throwing popcorn at each other? One of them's just fallen in the pool. That wasn't bad. Why is he in the pool? Now we've got 2 problems to deal with. There's the person upstairs that's stuck, and there's the sinking clown in the pool because he shouldn't have done that, but he has. But the audience love it. They don't know that isn't part of the act or the routine. So I think when you look at things like that, it's fantastic. If we can cover ourselves, whether it's tech covering artists or artists covering tech, working as a singular team to produce something it's magical to watch. And then you sit in the debriefs and everybody moans and, well, that shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't, but it did. how well did we get over it? And I think if you can sit there and go, the audience still had a great time, you can sit back and go, we've won. It's hard to say those things because nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I always used to say, was it safe? And if the answer is yes, then I said, well, that's a good result, right? Like the rest is bonus.
Exactly.
If we entertain the audience after that, it's great.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you've got those characters for, right? That's why you have the people you've got around you to be able to jump in and react, whether it be someone upstairs, someone in the pool, someone backstage, or even the guys on stage. They've just got to react. And that's a sign to how good and professional they are as well, I think.
Oh, sometimes you see the clown's best work in those moments.
Right. I completely agree. I did a job middle of last year. I was up at Sharjah Performing Arts Academy. So I was doing something with Jackie, who you had on recently.
I did, yeah.
And it was an easy gig, Steve. We've got 12 or 15 small performances to light, about 10, 15 minutes each. And they've been told it can't be technically complicated because we've only got 2 days to design it, program it, run it. Okay. One kid came up and he gave me his script. And he said, don't you worry, I've noted everything out for you. I was like, right, what do you mean you've noted everything out? Oh, I've given you all the cue points. I'm like, right, okay. I looked through it, there was 70 cues in 15 minutes across lighting, video, there were sound effects. And I'm sat there. Honestly, I looked at it, and this is one of those career-defining moments for me. And I told him at the time, I was like, if I can pull this off, I'll remember it for the rest of my career and my life. And I'm sat there, so we've rehearsed it, and I've screwed it up through both rehearsals because I'm reading it, I'm watching it, I'm trying to press the lighting control. We're running QLab, there's projection screens going in and out, and there's just me sat in this control room. So, I'm show caller, I'm lighting guy, I'm video guy, I'm sound guy, and I've got to watch the stage at the same time. And we start this rehearsal. We know it's full performance, and we get halfway through, and I'm in the groove, and I've got it. And I had a lighting cue that went with a video cue, and a lighting cue with an audio cue, and I hit the lighting cue, and I hadn't read the audio cue bit. I jumped straight over it, and he sat there. And for him, it must have felt like 10 minutes he was sat on stage because his cue was the audio, not the lighting. And I looked at him and went, he hasn't moved. Oh, no, I haven't pressed go. So jump over and hit the space bar. And then he came up to me afterwards and he said, Steve, I was sat there for a long time. I was like, it could have been longer, mate, because I had to go back and reread it. I was like, I told you it was too complicated. But he sat and he just waited. And then I was just like, that was the wrong thing to do. You could have ad-libbed around it. So we did the second performance the night after, and there was one slightly different part of his performance, and I did the same thing but backwards. Played the audio cue and I missed the lighting cue, and I looked up, or I thought I'd hit it, and I was just ghosted the button, and I look up and his lights aren't on, so I hit it, and he just walked out of his light. So I went back and he stepped back to and he was just playing with me at that point, and I was like good, because the audience has got a reaction. The audience are absolutely crying because he's talking in the dark and then the light comes on and he jumped out of it. And it was almost supposed to happen. It was so good. And I said to him afterwards, I was like, that is how you perform on stage. You take something, and if you can turn it into comedy, given that you're delivering a comedy sketch, play with it. And he said, can we do that every time we do this rehearsal? And I was like, what? Every time we do the run, every time we do the performance, can you remember not to press the button? And I'm like, probably not, no. We'll just busk it. And that's kind of what it turned into for 3 more performances. He didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to screw it up, and there was one I got perfect. And he came and went, I didn't like it. Why? He was like, there was no slapstick to play with. It's like, oh God. So I've now got to purposely get it wrong so that you have a better performance. The joys. These things happen, right? Live entertainment, you are not going to get everything right every single time. And you come off stage and you hate yourself for it. And by off stage, my off stage is out of the control room. You kick yourself, and it is what it is. You look at it and go, right, okay, I don't do the same thing tomorrow. Pick myself back up, brush it off. Let's go hit tomorrow's performance and try and nail it. And when you've been around long enough, Anna, you'll know the same thing with thousands and thousands of performances under your belt. there's a few that you do look back at and go, I wouldn't have done that today.
Yeah.
But again, it's just like
Was it for
growth,
me?
right? It's always growing and learning.
Yeah, I always say to show callers when I used to teach them, like, when you've made a mistake, the first thing you got to do is drop it and move on. Because, like, if you're sitting there beating up yourself and you're still trying to call a show, you're just going to make more mistakes, you know? And it's something I've even had to tell myself, like, drop it, move on, drop it, move on. It's okay. It's okay. And you have to, like, psychologically get out of that beating yourself up, because you still got to concentrate for another 30, 40 minutes and fly other people in the air and do all that sort of stuff. And you can't be in that headspace where things are, you're not feeling good about yourself. It's a real mental training.
You've got to get yourself through, right? It's one of those, I will keep this emotion inside of me until I get to the end of the show. And then I'll go away and do whatever I need to do. Scream into a corridor. Yeah, exactly. Quick toilet trip. And everybody's like, oh, he's had a bad show. As soon as you walk past. But it's what you've got to do. You've got to get yourself through. And it is, I've seen it a numerous amount of times with different operators and show people where they do snowball. And that's that moment where for me, it's a big learning exercise for both the character, whoever is operating, and almost me as a manager, to be able to go, how do I get them out of this? Sometimes you've got to jump in and take over. It's the only way. It's just be like, go and take 5 minutes. You're going to make it worse. I'll take over. But the ones where you can just talk them through it and be like, hey, forget about it. Has anybody died? No. Has anybody got injured? No. Was it that big of a drama? Probably not. Move on. We'll discuss it afterwards, and we'll try and find a way to stop it from happening again. Especially when you see the reoccurring things. Why is it reoccurring? Is it you're not good enough, or the show's too complex in the way that it's called? Can we make it easier? Can we, there's so much tech with us. How can we utilize the tech to make our jobs better? Can we automate it a bit more? And as soon as you start asking yourself these questions, you can make it better for everybody, not just the operator that you've got now, but everybody that then follows them, or the people that come in to train. You get the green apprentice that wants to come and play for a few weeks, and they go, oh, this is easy. Oh, it is now. It wasn't 3 years ago. Let me give you an empty console and let's see how easy it is then, shall we?
Processes are built over time.
Oh, especially with like the corporate stuff, I see it a lot now. I walk in with a show file in my pocket for an MA that I've had for nearly 20 years, and it's constantly getting built and developed. So I know where every screen is and every button is on every screen. And they're walking, oh, this is really easy. Well, okay, let's start with a new show, shall we? You think this is as easy as you think it is, you're massively, massively wrong. And it's that, it's that then growing them and getting them to learn that, while yes, your main show is this easy, let's do some corporate work. Let's start from a blank. Let's do some training of how we build shows out, what we're looking for. It might look nice, but can we improve it? Those little elements that I think for me grow me as a person, but also grow the people that are around us. And in this, in this world, in this particular region of the UAE, it's very, very junior. I refer to the UAE quite a lot as it's like an adolescent teenage. She's fighting me constantly because it wants to be better.
Yeah, I have also termed the UAE as like a teenager, to be honest. So funny that you say the same thing. Yeah,
right. But I've been doing a lot of work in Saudi recently, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a fantastic part of the world. But that's the toddler. It wants to be running, but it's struggling to walk. And I've got a 16-month-old at the minute, and I see his frustration when I do something and he wants to do it, and he gets really angry about it. And eventually he'll get it. And Saudi Arabia feels like that's doing that, but a little bit, it's almost on steroids. They do a lot really well, but they're constantly trying to fight to be the biggest and the best, but they haven't got that skill set around them yet. So it's going to be really interesting watching that space inside the GCC over the next 10, probably the next decade, 15 years, of how it develops and learns to grow, and how it becomes a little bit more mature in its knowledge base. It's all well and good saying there's all the money. We've got a workflow. There's a process that needs to happen. And if you skip it, you're going to struggle somewhere, But that's down to us to teach them, right? And make them
100%.
understand why we
And
do
it's
it.
the foundations that, like you said, I don't believe you master any part of this industry for at least 10 to 15 years anyway, right? So you can't sort of rock in and go, yep, let's be ready to do all of these things. It's something that accumulates over time. You don't master these things. Mastery is literally what it says. You have to master something before you can be really good at all of that. And that doesn't come overnight. And so, yeah. But I have to ask, because it's my the last few questions and we're running out of time. What's your most favorite thing about the job or the industry?
Oh, this is a really difficult question because I've got 1,000. I love it. I absolutely love getting up and going to work every single day. I always, and I think it stems back to watching someone like Franco, who is a master, or was a master, working on stage and him walking in and having fun. And he might have been angry and he might have, thrown his toys out the pram sometimes, but he always had fun. And I remember just playing and sitting on stage, and it was the first time that was almost like a career-defining moment for me. Sitting on that stage and him just saying, I don't care what you show me, just show me something. I don't care if I hate 100 things and I hate everything all day, just keep showing it me. And it was fun and I enjoyed it, and I'd go to bed like exhausted. And that's what I love about the industry. We go in and we work really hard and we produce what we produce to the best of our ability, and then we do the same again every single day, and every day is different, and it's fun. I really enjoy it. And the always ever changing tech helps us as creators. We're constantly playing because people keep giving us new toys, and while I'm getting new toys to play with, I'm going to push it to its absolute limit. What can we do with it? A manufacturer says we can do this, and that's my limit. I'm going to try and get it past that and do something that nobody's seen before. And I think that's the bit for me, is that, and seeing, once we've done that, the fun bit, seeing the reaction of everybody walking out and going, no matter what it is, whether it's lighting a dolphin show or presentation that is very natural, all the way to something as crazy as a Cirque show or a Franco show, all of those elements and everything in between, it's playing and having fun.
I think that's one of the gifts that Franco definitely bestowed on people if you got the opportunity to work with him, is that ability to create as a collective group of people, no matter who you were, artists and technicians and designers and everybody and it's something that I carry very close to my heart when we do projects, because that's something that it's irreplaceable, that kind of energy to do that. So the other question I had was, sorry, go ahead. You wanted to finish your thought?
I was just going to say that the phrase for me, and I'm not going to say the full phrase, but I can do it in a word: shake. The second you say that and somebody's worked around someone like Franco, you immediately go, yeah. And I walk into every environment now and I'll scream that phrase at the top of my lungs. And that's what we'll do for the next 10 minutes to an hour. Just play and see what we can do. And it makes everybody's day better.
Well, everybody knows my sort of Franco saying, because I remember once in the creation that I did, somebody told him, that's impossible. And he turned around to them and he said, prove it. So now whenever anybody says something to me, it's impossible, in my head I have Franco's voice going, prove it.
Prove it. Yeah. Yeah, and I bet you pulled it off as well.
No, I'll tell you that story another time, but we definitely proved that it was possible. And so I always, it's a good reminder of pushing the boundaries, which he was wonderful at, for sure.
Absolutely. So you're saying that you had another question?
Yeah, my other final question is, if you could change one thing about your job or the industry, what would it be?
Again, there's probably 1,000. And I think there's a lot of change to happen, especially when I look at it from a Middle East point of view. I think the one thing that I really want to change is getting more local talent, finding more local talent, teaching it, and getting them to a point where they appreciate it the same way that I do or my team does, in that you don't just walk into a job like this. You've really got to have a passion for it, and then you've got to work at your passion. It's all well and good saying, I've got a degree, I'm great. I personally strongly disagree with that statement. The first day you actually start to learn is the day you get your degree. And that's day number one for me in this industry. You might have a lot of theory, but that's not practical
That's right.
necessarily, but being able to get some raw talent and helping them grow to produce something that's, just out of this world, being able to nurture that inside of this region, I think is really important. And I'd love to change it, because at the minute everybody's flown in. There's very few world-class people in this part of the world at the minute. But I think it's got the ability to have some of the most phenomenally gifted people, because they look at the world very differently. And I think having that inside of the industry is going to be fundamental moving us forwards. Globally, not just regionally, being able to produce somebody that can see something so differently to the way that I see it, being a Westerner, and then be able to then transition that globally, I think is going to be fantastic. But there isn't a big push for it that we see at the minute. I know Sharjah Performing Arts Academy is doing an amazing job. I do a lot of work with them, and all pushing their programs. But it's only one. We need to expand on that. And then real world environment. Getting them out, not just sitting behind a desk and doing some theory. Get them to come and play with people like me that are in the field doing it constantly, and put them under pressure. Break them. Let's not worry about the snowflakeness of the world. Let's really push these people to see what they've got, because that's where magic happens, in my opinion, based on what I've done over the years. Just being able to do that, I think, is going to be a game changer. And it'd be good for the industry and the region, right? Being able to give back to the region that has given so much to me, I think, is important.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Steve. It was such a pleasure to spend some time with you today on the podcast.
Yes,
I wish you all the best for your business, and hope to see you in Dubai soon.
Yeah, definitely. Shout when you're here. We'll definitely catch up.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve.
Amazing. Thanks. Have a great day.
Theatre at Life is a global media site for entertainment. Memberships start at only $38 per year. You can have unlimited access to our daily published articles, including entertainment news and the writings of active industry professionals, ensuring that you are always up to date on the global happenings in the world of entertainment. Become a part of the international entertainment community and join us now at www.theatreartlife.com.